you wait a second longer. We are very, very excited to have with us today Sylvester McCoy, and interviewing him is the wonderful Lee. Lee, over to you. Sorry, it looks like we're getting some interference there. Let's just try that again. Lee, are you there?
Yeah. Whoa, hello. I've just arrived. Hang on a second. Oh, there we go. Right, I've just borrowed a vehicle off somebody. Doesn't mind. Yeah, it's a bit small, isn't it? Well, yes. I'll tell you who the vehicle is. It is the marvellous Sylvester McCoy. Hello.
Hello. Top of the morning to you, and the rest of the day to me. There I am. How are you yourself?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm absolutely splendid. I've been put under house arrest by the President of France. So I'm under, but then he put the whole of France under house arrest. So we're all in the same boat. Well, I mean, it's not a boat. It's a house. Well, it's not a house. It's France. Anyway, you know what I mean. I'm under house arrest in this little medieval village up on top of a mountain. And my next door neighbour is Richard the Lionheart. He's been here since the Crusades.
Well, you've got the wonderful weather for it. Look at that blue sky.
Yes, it is. Yes, it's beautiful, actually. It's but you've had lovely weather too. I mean, aren't the gods cruel? They give you, Britain, the best spring you could ever have, and then they lock you down all the way through it.
Just the way it goes, isn't it? But you've got a lovely position where you are today, and you're looking very well.
Very comfortable position.
Well, I tell you what, you were a member of the Tiswas Team, sort of.
I was, yes. I was also in The Hobbit, you know.
Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But obviously, the people here want to hear about your Tiswas years, don't they?
They do. So do I. I'm so old, I can't remember.
Well, I was going to say, how well do you remember those times?
Oh, gosh. They were unforgettable. I mean, really unforgettable. It was the most anarchistic thing I've ever done. And I had done very anarchistic things in the theatre beforehand, but Tiswas, wow. The very first show I did, my whole back seized up with fear. And by the end of it, I thought, I'll never do that again. And then after a couple of weeks, I felt I had withdrawal symptoms, and they asked me to come back, so I did, I'm glad to say.
We just seen you on the screen just now with Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks. Bit of a
oh, yeah. That was one of my favourite bits, was Giant Haystacks. I don't know sadly I can't see what you're showing. I'd like to. But it was the one, because he was a giant. He was huge. And, of course, I got the privilege of putting a custard pie in his face. So what I had to do was to get a ladder and put up against his chest and then climb out the ladder and then go in his face. And he was so sweet. He didn't kill me.
he was full of fun for it all, wasn't he?
Yes. Pardon? Sorry, could you say that again?
He was full of fun. He was well into the moment.
He was full of fun. He was also full of food, full of muscle.
Oh, of course, Big Daddy as well, you know, two of the biggest wrestlers of that moment.
Yeah, he was a sweet man, Big Daddy as well. It was funny. These two huge, amazing wrestlers were so sweet and gentle.
Yeah. Well, how did you actually get into Tiswas in the first place then?
You know, I can't remember. I mean, I got in by going through the ATV studios in Birmingham. That's as far as I remember.
The stairs in the corridor.
Someone must have asked me, and I thought, yeah, I'll do that. Oh, I know. Actually, coming back to me, I was doing. There was children's. There was ATV were doing kind of public broadcasting television, and I was doing films for schools. I remember now. So I was hanging around, the studio. I was around then, and so I think when I sat in Noel Gordon's chair and was electrocuted, someone said, "Ooh, I think you could, maybe become a member of Tiswas," something like that.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't show any reverence for the saintly Noel Gordon.
Oh dear. Well, the cardinal sin if you upset dear Nolly.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you'd obviously grown up in Dunoon, up in Scotland, and had you ever had any, aspirations to become an actor or a comedian or anything like that?
Oh, yes, from the very beginning. I mean, from the very beginning, I was trying to make people laugh, falling off things. And my granny once took me aside when I was 5 and said, you should become an actor, you know. I think she was trying to get rid of me, but she thought I should become an actor. And then years later, when I went to study to be the Pope, I went to a seminary in Scotland. And then when my granny came up, my uncles, to visit me, the priests said, he should be an actor, you know. I think they wanted me to get on the stage, but the one that leads town. But anyway, so I was obviously, you know, that kind of show off from the early days.
Yeah. Of course, you did leave town eventually. You moved down to the smoke of the big city. You were a big thing in the city.
5'6". Yes, I was a trainee executive, but it was more like a trainee alcoholic, actually. It was a horrible job. I mean, I hated it. It was very Dickensian. On a sunny day like today, if you sat in the office, it was in a back office. We weren't meeting the public, really. You had to wait permission to take your jacket off. It was horrible. And then so the 60s arrived. One could become a hippie and drop out. So I jumped out and ended up in the Roundhouse Theatre, which was a swinging 60s centre. And there I was in the box office. And someone mistook me for an actor and gave me a job.
Wow. Because at that point you were friends with Brian Murphy from George and Mildred, as we would know him.
Yes, because Brian, his wife was assistant administrator at the Roundhouse, and when Brian wasn't working, he'd hang around, and I was selling tickets and being receptionist and all that kind of stuff, and he would collect the tickets that I sold. And we used to loon around, and so we just had fun, really, and so he thought I was an actor. So he recommended me to a genius, comic, wonderful, glorious man called Ken Campbell, who was my Svengali, really. And he kind of, Ken, do you want to join my show? And always being a yes man, never able to say no to anything. I said yes, and that's it. I became an actor.
Oh, well. What sort of things did you do in the Ken Campbell Roadshow? Because at that point, you weren't even Sylvester McCoy, were you?
Well, no, the early days I was Kent Smith, which is a name I was born with, really. In that we did kind of modern myth sketches, which were quite fun, really. But then after, because Bob Hoskins was a member, and Dave Hill and Jane Wood and Ken and myself, and we used to do these sketches. Quickly trying to tell you that there was one about the vanishing grandmother. This is what a modern myth of this family in Italy driving along, and the grandmother dies in the back with the kids. So what they do is they take her out, they wrap her in the tent, put her on the roof, and then they go in and find the police. They go into the police, and of course they don't speak Italian, and they don't speak, he doesn't speak English, and so you have to mime all the thing about a dead grandmother, and that was the comedy, was getting everything mixed up. And then the final thing of the myth was they would go out to show the policeman, and someone had stolen the car.
Right.
That's a modern myth. I mean, and there was a series of things like that, you know, kind of, we did that. But then Bob left, we ended up working for a circus for the summer. And then after the circus, I said to Ken, why can't we use these skills? So we created An Evening with Sylvester McCoy, the Human Bomb. And that's when I became Sylvester McCoy, because Ken wanted me to pretend to the world that Sylvester McCoy was a real person, not an actor playing.
Right. Because in the first place, your first name was Sylvester, without the R, wasn't it?
Yes, that's true, because then later on, then people would get confused. Some would bill me Sylvester, some as Sylvester. And then later on, I was playing Stan Laurel in a play, and his girlfriend at the time said to him, you know that your name, Stan Laurel, is 13 letters. I don't think that's lucky. And by then, he hadn't made it. But I think they were touring around doing, you know, shows that weren't very successful in America. Anyway, they were in Laurel Canyon or somewhere like that, so they changed it to Stan Laurel, and then overnight he became a huge success. And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how many letters I've got in my name. Well, Sylvester McCoy was 13, so I added the R.
The old actor superstitions.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't really believe in that, but I do. You know, it's that one of those things. It's silly, it's ridiculous, it's mad. But, you know, if you swear and, if you mention a certain Scottish play in the dressing room, you have to go outside, turn around 3 times, swear, knock on the door and come back in again.
I can see everybody else watching this conversation going, no, don't say it.
No, I wouldn't.
Fair enough at all. Of course, after, the Ken Campbell Roadshow, you did take to the stage proper, becoming a proper actor.
Oh, yes, I did. I took to the stage. Yes, I mean, what happened was I was busking outside Joan Littlewood's, another great theatrical genius, female, wonderful, glorious, frustrating, lovable lady. I was busking outside the Stratford East theatre workshop, and Joan Littlewood came out and loved that. And she used to throw pound notes at us. In those days, that was quite a lot of money. And then one day it was raining, and she said, "Come in, dolls," and put us on the stage. And so we did a warm-up for The Hostage, a huge, successful play by Brendan Behan. And then we left, and off we went again to tour Europe and come back. And then when we finished the Can-Cap, she phoned me up and said, "Come and join us." So I did, and I became a more legitimate type of actor. Although there's no difference, really. I mean, it was the same thing. I mean, although I do a lot of comedy, I mean, many comedians are great actors.
Yeah. Well, of course, when you were doing the comedy...
that sounds like I'm saying I'm a great actor. I'm not. I'm quite small.
Well, when you were doing the comedy, the things you sort of became well known for are the things that people would remember, stuffing ferrets down the trousers, banging a nail in your nose and, setting fire to your head. How dangerous was all of that?
Very.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I mean, it was... There was another one we did do, they used to get a rope and tie it around my neck, with a slip knot like that, and then the rope. And then they get two hefty chaps out of the audience, and then they were to try and strangle me, pull it. Because I'm quite small, and so they were tall, and they used to pull it. And the thing about the rope, it was a certain kind of circumference of the rope meant it wouldn't slip. It was a special, they used it for ships and things like that. So that was the secret, it wouldn't slip. But I used to take off, and I used to think, this must make a wonderful image. Me between two tall chaps, me dangling with my feet off the ground, being strangled. But I mean, there were sometimes guys would start to jerk it. And when they did that, then, I was nearly dead.
Oh dear, you couldn't get away with that.
Yes, the setting fire to my head. One night we were playing at Nottingham Playhouse, a late night show, and the guy who was supposed to set light to my head had a little bit too much of the liquid enthusiasm, and so he forgot there was in the tube there was a flap that went down like that and covered my head. You see, and so he forgot to put the flap down, so he actually set light to my head.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing at this. Health and safety.
No, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I've still got hair, although it's going quickly.
Now, we're talking about kind of mid-70s, late 70s. This is the point at which you, I suppose, got into television, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I ended up going Vision On first. For those who were born in 1066, they might remember that programme. It was a wonderful programme that had originally begun for the programme for the hard of hearing, the deaf. And then gradually it became more popular with everybody. It became, universally popular. Universal, in fact. It won the Grand Prix de Jeunesse and was loved all over the world. And I was so lucky. That was my very first TV series, and that was Tiswas. And then from that, I went into a thing called Jigsaw with Dave Rappaport. And then somehow I ended up on, Tiswas. And I spent most of my early TV years, but 12 of them, every year doing a TV series for children.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah. In Tiswas, one of the most fondly remembered clips, well, there's quite a few, actually. There's one where you turn into a human car and you take Chris Tarrant for a drive. Do you remember that?
Oh, well, yes. No, well, actually, I it was a lorry, really. I think I was playing a lorry. I kept wondering whether Minnie Driver's sister, a lorry driver, had been called after me. But anyway, it was, and then there are those wonderful windscreen wiper glasses. I love that. No, it was great fun doing.
Yeah, of course you had the breakdown at the end.
Yes, yes. Well, one does. I mean, doing Tiswas, I think we all had a breakdown in the end.
Was it as manic as it looked on screen?
Oh God, madder. I mean, more insane. You would not believe. I mean, when I told you the first time I did it, my whole back seized up. But then afterwards, once I got used to it, I used to look forward to the chaos because we'd kind of rehearse. Well, I wouldn't call it rehearsing. We'd meet in the hotel next door to the studio of an evening on Friday night, and on the back of a beer can, a beer mat, we'd discuss what we were going to do, and then wake up the next morning with a hangover and do it. But it was, when it went wrong, I remember I was doing a sketch, and then suddenly the cameraman would cut away before I'd done the punchline to someone being interviewed. So I'd go up and wrestle with the camera and bring it back, finish it, and that was the fun. We always looked forward to the chaos. That was when it was really great fun.
You just knew you could get away with anything, really, didn't you? I suppose.
Indeed, and I mean the reason for that was there was no department for children's television and ATV at that time. It came in towards the end of Tiswas, and that was the beginning of the end of Tiswas, because no one was controlling it, if you know what I mean. And it was totally... I didn't see... Tiswas, when I was doing it for the first 2 years, wasn't shown in London, and I lived there, so I used to commute up and then afterwards go back home after the show. So I didn't really know about what it looked like. It was just something you did. I didn't know the response. And then a few years later, I was working at Nottingham Playhouse, and I was wandering down the street in Nottingham, and suddenly a group of skinheads, come around the corner, who looked like Peter at the moment. And anyway, a group of skinheads came round the corner, and they saw me, and they went, "Ah!" And I thought, "Oh my God, help, help, help." And they rushed up to me and said, "Oh, Sylv, we love Tiswas, we love you, have a chip." And that's when I discovered people liked it.
Oh, it's amazing. Something we always look at, one of the clips, compost corner. If I shout compost corner, people will shout compost corner back, and I can see everybody at the moment. Yeah. You were in a flower pot.
I played a daisy, I think. Yes, I was a daisy, wasn't I? Yes, and yes, the new knight, he used to pull the hairs out of my leg, actually.
Oh,
Lenny Henry, yes. What a sweet young man he was, but he was cruel. He used to, play what's his name? The character he played.
David Bellamy.
He did a wonderful David. Yes, he did a wonderful David Bellamy. But he actually used to pull the hairs out of my leg, and I had to stand there like a daisy. I want to kill him. It was painful.
Of course, he knocked you off balance as well when he put some pig manure in your face.
Yes, I know, yes. Well, high art. Oh, you'd have to be high to do it. I mean, sorry, terrible joke.
You're lucky that Chris Tarrant caught you, really.
I beg your pardon?
You're lucky that Chris Tarrant caught you when you fell over.
Oh, yes, that time, yes, that was very kind. I think after a few years he would have dropped me.
Now, we can't talk about Tiswas without talking about you as a werewolf.
Oh, yes. I have to admit, I actually stole that act from one of my gods, really. Max Wall, wonderful, great clown, comedian, genius, adorable. He was in the same realm as Buster Keaton, and I saw him do that once, and I'm afraid I stole it. But then, I mean, comic actors, we all borrow from other people. And this was like, thank you, Max, for being a genius. I hope you don't mind my messing up your wonderful act. But it was great fun to do. I did enjoy doing it.
You were in two sort of distinct periods of Tiswas. I think you did about 1978, 79. Then you came back for the final series. There was a bit of a gap.
Yeah, but the final series, it was a bit, because it was now, they had a children's department and an executive producer. It wasn't quite as wild, you know what I mean? It was a bit more structured and, it was coming.
It's a different dynamic as well, isn't it, with a different team?
Sorry, your mic's not very... could you speak slower?
Dynamic with, a different team. You've got Gordon Astley replacing Chris Tarrant, Dane Hegarty coming in as well.
Oh, yeah. Was I there then? I can't remember.
Yeah.
I only just remember. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Anyway, yes.
So
and that's when they started...
I was just going to say, when it all came to an end, were you sad that it had ended, or you got plenty of other things to carry on to?
Well, I mean, the glorious thing about Tiswas, it was a kind of a Saturday job. It was my Saturday job out of the theatre school. No, just work, really. No, I mean, I loved it because I could do plays and stuff. When I was in London, I was doing a Can't Pay, Won't Pay by Dario Fo in the West End, and we used to have 2 shows on a Friday, 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock. A car would come pick me up and drive me to Birmingham. I'd get up the next morning, do Tiswas, then jump on the train back to London and do a 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock on Saturday, and then go home and collapse on Sunday.
Busy time.
Oh, yes, it was always busy. I mean, in fact, I've always been incredibly busy because it's that problem. I can't say no.
It's the actor's thing of not wanting to not work, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, and also I started late. I was 27 when I started, and it was as if I kept running to try and catch up with all those other years where I should have been doing it. Wait a minute, I was doing it, but no one was paying me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in the 80s, so you as you say, you were on the stage, you were doing Shakespeare. One thing that I remember, you did Shakespeare with Timothy Dalton just before your lives changed, both of your lives changed in certain ways.
Yes, we did that. We did Antony and Cleopatra and the Taming of the Shrew with Vanessa Redgrave and Timmy, and we did it in the West End. And I always say, it's a lie, but everything I say is a lie anyway. I always say that 2 letters arrived at the stage door. One was for Timmy and one was for me. And I think they went to the wrong person because he was off for James Bond and I was on for Doctor Who. And I said, well, I mean, it should have been the other way around because I'm a Scot and James Bond is a Scot, Is that right, Miss Moneypenny? You know what I mean? So, but he ended up being Bond and I ended up being Who. He would have made a great Who, actually. He did play a Time Lord, I think, in one of the things, and he was brilliant. It was a Christmas special of one of the Doctors.
Yeah, David Tennant's last one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he was brilliant. I mean, you could see he had such authority.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we move on to Doctor Who then now, had you watched it before? Did you think anything, think much of it? Did you enjoy it?
No, I'd watched it way back in the 60s. Patrick Troughton. I used to do the pools. I lived in the bedsit land with I brought the cigarettes and my friend, he had the television and we used to do the pools and we watched the results of the football pools and suddenly this strange little program came on afterwards and we became addicted. But then after John Pertwee and then the beginning of Tom Baker, I then became an actor. And in those days, people might find this amazing. They didn't record, you couldn't record anything. And they never repeated anything. So I never saw it. So I lost touch with it for years. So when I got it, I had a very distant memory of Patrick Troughton. And so he was my influence to begin with. And luckily, I'm lucky, because I didn't have any baggage. I didn't have any knowledge of it much. So I came in with the script editor, Andrew Cartmel, who was Canadian, and he was as ignorant as I was. And so we just started again. How do you interpret these, scripts? And we did it in our own individual way. And there was a bit of a ruction at first. People weren't too keen on it because it wasn't the thing. But one of the 21st century producers told me later that we had changed its direction, unknowingly, because we didn't know what the direction was. Whereas before it was more cartoon-like, it became something much more three-dimensional. So I was very proud of that. But it was ignorance. It wasn't planning.
You and Sophie, in particular, as Ace, had the best combination, I always think.
Yeah. No, I mean, yes. No, we got on incredibly well from the very, very beginning. We still do. And she always laughed at my jokes. She still does. She thinks she'd learn, but she hasn't yet.
Now, of course, you've got the distinction of being the final Doctor in the original series.
Yes, I nearly killed it off.
But you've returned to it so many times as well, which is always welcome, I think. I mean, you did the Children in the Moon thing.
Oh, that was terrible. No, that was a nightmare. Wasn't that appalling? Ooh. The only nice thing about it was I had got to work with Louise Jameson, who would be the other companion I would like to have worked with. And they were trying to make it with 3D television. And it was a special camera they got from Germany. And it had a long umbilical cord, you see. And in order for the 3D effect to work, they said, it never did, but anyway, they said, they would, you had to move, the camera had to move all the time. So they put us, we were chatting, Louise and I, like this, and the camera was going round us like that. And of course, the umbilical cord kept bringing us together, and we ended up like this. It was the happiest day of my life.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. Because you then went on to, finally finish off your role with Paul McGann.
Yes, it did. My friend Paul McGann, he stole my TARDIS.
Oh.
Anyway, the other thing is, I mean, I ended up with the console room, the one that I dreamt of. I mean, I didn't ask them to make it like that, but I'd always thought I'd like steampunk type of, I love, because as a child I loved, is it 21,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea by Disney, which was, they had the submarine and it was all steampunk. And I loved that. And so I ended up with that. That made me very happy.
Yeah. I discovered recently that around the same time, sort of the mid-90s, that you ended up back on Saturday morning television on a programme called Ghoul Lashed. Do you remember much about that?
Oh, yes, I think so. Yes, that was with Big Jim Carter, who became, the butler in Downtown Abbey. Yeah, it was. We played. If this is the one I'm thinking about, we played two extraterrestrial school inspectors who came down to Earth to see if there was any intelligence in the school. So we did this kind of a quiz, and there was a thing called the Grunder Hunter, which was one of those rocky, those things that you rock about in, and they made it up like a kind of a space monster. And they used to put a child on there, and I had to bounce around on the bouncy bit, asking them questions, and they had to answer them while they bounced them out like this. It nearly killed me. Could you move back a bit? Sorry, when you move forward, you become a bit fuzzy.
Oh, right.
Not visually. Thank God. I mean, such a hand face. I'm such a good hiker, aren't I? Anyway, yeah, that's better. I can hear you. Say that thing again.
Was you always the physical comedian, weren't you?
Physical, yes, I was. Yeah, now I'm a creaky old man. I got comedy war wounds, folly. Ken Campbell, I used to fall downstairs. I mean, and I quite enjoyed doing that because people thought, wow. And Ken said, yeah, McCoy, he said, it won't hurt if you get a laugh. He was right. It didn't hurt at the time. He didn't tell me 40 years later. It would nearly kill me.
Oh, God. We've had a few messages come in this morning. We've got one from DRL0206. He wanted to say to you on behalf of his cousin Patrick, who's partially deaf and loved Vision On as a kid. He just wanted to thank you for all the work that you did on Vision On.
Oh, how nice. Thank you. That's lovely to hear. I'm very proud of Vision On. It was great fun. Yeah. We had such freedom as well.
Yeah, Lloyd 1H said, well done, Sylvester. You made up some great characters. You made them work well on Tiswas.
Thank you. These numbers, what are they? Robots? I mean, I don't know.
It's their names. It's the names.
The mums were mathematicians or something.
That's it. Yeah. We'll call them that. Blackbird 1976 has been on to ask, are you missing lots of Comic Cons at the moment?
Yes, of course. Aren't we all, really? Yeah. Yes, it's a bit sad, really, because, I mean, I enjoy doing Comic-Con so much, partly because it's to do with the Q&As, the performance bit of it. I love doing that bit. I mean, getting down in amongst the audience and, having fun. So I can't do that anymore. But I'm doing a couple coming up from Zoom. They're trying to make them work on Zoom. So I'm interested. I'm doing one next Sunday, I think, to somewhere in America, all of America maybe. And then I'm doing one at the end of July. So this is an experiment to see how it works. So that'd be interesting, really.
Yeah, well, it's working well. Do you enjoy keeping up with the fans? You appreciate that they like to watch the old programmes. I mean, in particular, Doctor Who, I suppose. But I must say, I'm delighted in a way. Because when it finished, when I nearly killed it off, I thought that was it. And then when they brought it back, I thought, well, a whole new generation, and they won't know about me. But then they loved it, Doctor Who, so much they went back and rediscovered the old croaky doctors, and that's the joy to meet some young kid who comes up and says, "Oh, you're my 5th favourite Doctor." Oh, do they ever ask you to play the spoons at all, by any chance? Do they ever ask you to play the spoons?
Yeah, they do all the time. There we go.
You could almost say that was planned. Do you find many people remember you on Tiswas and things like Jigsaw, with David Rappaport and so on?
Yes, I do. Every now and again, people come up and say, who's the Phantom Flanfinger? And all that kind of stuff. Or were you the Phantom Flanfinger? We say. So, yeah. No, it's always pleasing, really. Because, I mean, it's always pleasing when people come up and know you for other things. I mean, it's wonderful to be known as Doctor. It's such a privilege. I'm so lucky. I mean, it's been all over the world. People love it. And they've come to my character and they enjoy my character as well, and so that's great. But it's nice every now and again when someone comes up and talks about something else, that you've been in.
Yeah. One of the things you're perhaps most famous for, what more recently, is the Hobbit films. One of them was on ITV last night, as it happens. But you played, is it Radagast?
Radagast the Brown, with his Roscabel rabbit.
Well, how did you get the gig on The Hobbit?
Well, you see, I was up for Bilbo Baggins in Lord of the Rings 12 years earlier, and there were half a dozen actors, and they whittled them down, and I was whittled down to the last two. And sadly, Ian Holm was free that week, so he got the gig, and I didn't. So obviously they quite liked me because it hung on to me to the end. And so 12 years later, they asked me to screen test for Bilbo Baggins, for Radagast the Brown, and mainly because the director was going to be Guillermo del Toro, and he didn't know who I was. So I did the thing for it, and when he looked at it, he said, "Sí," which meant yes, of course. So I got the job. But then, due to problems in Hollywood with money and stuff like that, it ran over on a year, and he couldn't do it. So Peter took over, which was great, and I did it. What was glorious about Peter was I worked for him for 3 years, off and on doing that film, flying back and forth to New Zealand. What a life, really. And at the end of it, he was a sweet man. He always made a nice speech. The actor did this last scene and gave you a little present and said nice things. And then he was saying, and he said, "It was really nice working with you, Sylvester." And he said, "What was wonderful was I got to work with Doctor Who." He kept that quiet for 3 years.
So he's a secret fan as well.
He's no longer a secret. I've told the world.
True. I'm just going to talk about some of the things that you've done sort of the years since. We've seen you in the Mikado, Little Shop of Horrors. You've done King Lear.
Yes, I did with Ian McKellen. You might have heard of him. He was Gandalf. I did King Lear before. That was another reason why I got Radagast the Brown, really, because we toured all over the world with the Royal Shakespeare Company. We went to New Zealand, and Peter Jackson came and saw it, and that's how I think I got, he saw Ian and I work together and thought, they'll be good together. I must say it's a pain in the neck working with Ian McKellen, because he's so tall. I worked 2.5 years with him, and now, then 3 years, that's such a pain in the neck looking up at them.
Oh, if we move back to Tiswas just briefly then now, because
is it working technically all right at your end?
Yeah, it's fine. Just a little bit slow, but speed of the internet, we cope with that. It's okay.
Oh, is it? It's kind of making body burp noises here. It's making body burp noises this end. It's kind of weird. It's a bit Tiswas, really.
I thought we got Norman.
Okay, so ask your question. All right, yeah. Oh, that one, yeah.
That's him, yeah. But I say, moving back to Tiswas, you rejoined the team for the big reunion show, Tiswas Reunited.
Yeah, that was fun. That was sweet. That was lovely, really. It was also, what was bizarre was in the audience, there were some people who had ended up in the cage and, and you kind of vaguely recognized and remembered. I used to feel sorry for those people. They were in the cage because they come in all excited. There'd be people from, banks, all the workers from a bank or the police or all sorts of nurses and various things, and they all be coming in. They'd be really excited, and they put them in the cage, and then we come up and we'd soak them with water and slush, and they go, "Oh, wonderful!" And then 2 hours later, they'd be going. Always felt sorry for them.
Oh, there's a lot of people from the cage who are watching and also involved in all of this today. So you're talking to your audience there.
Well, they had my sympathy.
Oh dear. So you look back particularly on Tiswas fondly.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. No, I mean it was one off. You couldn't do that now. You wouldn't be allowed to. I'm blessed that. I was so lucky in those days of children's television. I did some amazingly good shows, and Tiswas was up there with them, really. Only it was completely off the wall and made it that kind of special. The others were more structured, but fascinating and, kind of educational and fun.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how much education came out of Tiswas.
I think we just loved it for what it was, just the knockabout humour, the pies and the water.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, it's lovely. Well, Sylvester, it's really lovely to talk to you this morning. Thank you for your memories about Tiswas.
My pleasure. Yeah. Right. Okay.
We'll carry on watching you in the good old clips.
Oh, splendid. Yeah.
And just one thing.
I'd love to have seen them. How do you see them? I don't know. Can't really. No.
Oh, there's a lot of them online. We'll tell you where they are.
All right. Okay. Okay.
So can I just say one more thing to you? Sylvester McCoy, you were my doctor. Thank you.
All right. Well, I hope you... did I deliver you?
Into the world of Doctor Who, yes.
Well done. Good. That's very sharp.
Sylvester, thank you for being with us this morning, and thank you for everything.
Pleasure.
It's lovely to be with you, and have a good day, and take care.
Au revoir. Bonne journée.